and this is my presentation for Cog Sci 1B. For my topic, I had chosen how similar are we to computers, and by we, I refer to like human mind slash brain. Um, so who am I? I think this is important to consider as I am doing this paper and presentation, just because my motivations and why am I doing this. So my name is Daniel Alpazar, and I go by the he, him pronouns. I'm a third-year undergraduate studying cognitive science with a minor in data science at UC Berkeley, and I wish to learn more about drawing the line between artificial intelligence systems and that of the human mind. Um, so just an introduction for my topic. So researchers in cognitive science and computer science for years have been trying to develop artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence has been used in various ways, including social platforms, phones, pretty much in like large connected aspects to our lives. Just because they're used to assist human like advancement and just overall like life. Uh, it is important to have like a deep understanding of both the human brain and the way that computers operate when we look at artificial intelligence. Um, just for instance, the human brain has emotions and neurological processes that produce cognition. On the other hand, computers do not have neurons and they just work through numbers, also known as the binary. This presentation will utilize findings from Douglas Kenrick and Arya Tanmay to better understand the connections between computers and the human mind. So table of contents, we'll first take a look at evolutionary psychology, cognitive science, and dynamical systems, a research paper written by Douglas Kenrick. And then we'll take a look at brain and computer work alike, binary storage, brain is RAM, and death is shutdown, another research paper written by Arya Gupta. We'll move on to strengths and weaknesses of the comparison in this topic, and then we'll wrap it up with my suggestions. So we'll first take a look at evolutionary psychology, cognitive science, and dynamical systems by Douglas Kenrick. So psychological research is often isolated within subdisciplines. These subdisciplines can include cognitive science, and then within cognitive science, there's psychology, philosophy, AI, and however, within these subdisciplines, there's many theories and disciplines within those disciplines. However, Kenrick states that many theories within social psychology are isolated from each other and from many theories in other areas of psychology. So there's almost like a branch between uh, these branches within cognitive science. Um, there's a need to integrate diverse findings and theories across various areas of psychology and neighboring sciences, more specifically cognitive science, evolutionary psychology, and dynamical systems theory have been proposed as ways to address the internal confusion in psychology. Um, Cognitive science revolutionized psychology by showing that machines could process information intelligently and suggest that human brains could be understood as information processing devices. The information processing metaphor has generated large amounts of research in topics such as pattern recognition and problem solving, and has then been applied to various areas of psychology, social, clinical, developmental. Um, so Kenrick notes that dynamical systems theory, also known as complexity theory, is rooted in artificial intelligence and often involves the study of simulated neural networks. This approach looks at the processes that result from simple inputs combined to produce complex outcomes at the systemic level. Complexity theories study broad rules that apply across all levels, from genes to neurons to large groups of people. Evolutionary psychology is concerned with the genetically based programs that animals use to solve adaptive problems in natural environments. Um, he considers animals and humans when looking at our brains and seeing how we operate through logic and through complex problem solving. Um, Evolutionary psychologists and dynamical system theorists both aim for like a comprehensive paradigm for psychology and advocate for a broad interdisciplinary perspective. Um, just because when we look at each subdivision within psychology or cognitive science, there is not one answer. There is no um, strict place for information. There is a mixture of all. Um, However, the two approaches that are mainly looked at when we look at uh, computer slash like simulated neural networks, we look at evolutionary psychology and dynamical systems. Um, But these two approaches can often be unaware of each other, and these kind of have mutual implications, which again, uh, it kind of blurs the foundation for like a paradigm that could be worked together to come to a concrete understanding. But traditional cognitive scientists, dynamical systems theories, and evolutionary psychologists could benefit from this increased mutual awareness, as I am trying to do when I'm comparing the human mind as well as computer systems. Evolutionary psychologists and cognitive scientists traditionally assume that microscopic units, such as genes or neurons, combine inputs in like a linear method to arrive at predictable solutions to recurring problems. So evolutionary psychologists recognize the limitations of simple genetic determinism. And if you don't know what genetic determinism is, it's okay, I did not either. Genetic determinism refers to the exclusive importance of genetic characteristics in comparison to other factors in behavior. Um, so the limitations of simple genetic determinism, um, and understand that evolved decision-making mechanisms interact with environmental variations. Dynamical systems theory shows us that complex outcomes can emerge from few variables interacting according to simple rules. Complex systems at every level, molecular, genes, neural, ecosystemic, often exhibit self-organization with order emerging out of initial order. So Kendrick basically takes a look at environmental um, factors when we look at how we operate our brains, which is very important to look at when we're combining this kind of question of the human mind as well as that of a computer, which does not think or operate in the same way that animals and humans do. Um, so we'll move on to brain and computer work alike binary storage. Brain is RAM and death is shutdown. So Gupta takes a more kind of AI slash computer understanding in the comparison. Um, it's stated that the brain stores more data than a computer, leading to slower processing times, which makes sense to us as humans. We can experience memories. However, it gets slightly difficult over time. As we get older, it can be harder to recall events that happened earlier in our lives. Um, Many people have many thoughts and tasks to complete at any given time, whereas computers execute one task at a time. And they do so in, quite frankly, how fast their internet is. Computers have no feelings or intelligence and work only as designed and instructed by the user. Their environments are much more different than our environments. Our environments cater to tangible, real world experiences, whereas computers' environments are slightly different. The human brain stores a large amount of data, including experiences and memories, but have difficulty accessing the appropriate information quickly due to the large amount of stored data. Again, like computers do not store experiences or memories, and they do not have the capacity to do so, at least as we know it now. Um, the brain and computer are similar in function, but the brain's programming and architecture are far more advanced. We know that the brain is natural. It is made by other humans. However, the computer is made by a brain. So then this is where the question of, how advanced is that of the other? Like, is the human mind at the equal level? Um, but when we look at these things, we also need to compare that of life and death. And when we look at death, it's the absence of current in the brain. It's when all our body processes just cease to continue. Um, it is said that we can surgically remove our hearts, but once our brain is removed or severed from our body, there's no coming back from it. And that's true because our brain is basically our RAM in the same way that a computer cannot operate without its RAM. Um, it is currently not possible to reinduce current in the brain or transplant a brain. Data storage in the brain is at a molecular level, allowing a single neuron to handle large amounts of data. This cannot be said for a computer. Whereas as a machine, data storage um, and at a molecular level and like advanced programming would be required to be input into it. And as of the year 2013, we are not there yet. However, uh, granted that now we have much more advanced AI systems, um, it can be said differently. And another thing to note is that computers do not have feelings. not unless there are artificial hormones, which again do not exist. Um, However, there may be dangers if we were to kind of give the same intelligence to a machine as humans. Um, Not looking at it through like an entertainment aspect or our movies, but rather how dependent humans can be to this intelligence should we retrieve it. And looking at the strengths of this topic, there's a comparison of the binary. We know that these systems operate and execute actions based off of information. This is done in our everyday lives, as well as computers when they look at information. We see that the evidence is strong. They both take into account neurobio and psychosocial aspects when we compare these two topics. Um, and there is an accuracy in the brain acknowledgement that, yes, we must consider the comparison or how similar. However, computers will never be a product of nature. They will forever be, um, like this technological system that is almost unnatural. Um, and we know that computers are technically better. They have the potential to operate very strongly with information processing. Um, this is not something that can be done with the human brain, at least not unless you're intensely educated or like even then there are limitations to our actions. Mm. And one final strength is that there can only be improvement from here. Computers are already so advanced, but they can only become better. The same way that our brains evolve and adapt to understand information, computers can too, since it is to us. Some weaknesses, however, would be that in storage and memory, like humans are fully capable of having a large memory. But from computers, you would have to invent some form of storage increase, just because our brains, aka our like hippocampus, like has the ability to have our entire life memorized. But this cannot be said for a computer. That would take a large amount of storage for computers. Um, Another thing is that like research can be outdated. These articles that I was able to read through were from 2001 and 2013. But since then, technology has changed and shifted, which goes on to my next point. Like artificial intelligence has improved, but what about us? There are programs like ChatGPT, smartphone assistants, and car systems that are largely being integrated into human life. But could this harm human growth? Can we, like start to become codependent on these things, which then could stunt our own growth and then causes its own issues, through our like reward system. That's just like another thing to note. And another is that like computers do not feel. Again, as I mentioned earlier, there has not been any research showing us that there is any emotion in computers being added. Could not having this emotion be like a bias or a flaw, or could it be a benefit when we look at decisions? Um, it's important to note because as humans, we take into account emotion for a lot of the decisions that we make. Um, and another one is that we die and computers don't. Human life could be so easily swiped if our brains suffered irreversible damage. If a computer RAM is damaged, we can always just replace it. But there is the question of like, is that the same computer? But by then we'll be tampering with philosophical approaches. And just like my suggestions for future research, I think it's important to dream, but realistically, I think there should be more research on like potential computer emotions, just because I think emotion can play a role in decision making, as well as limiting dependency. Again, like many people, there have been many studies that are showing that humans are becoming very, very dependent on our devices, and it is causing neurological issues. Um, and then again, as I mentioned earlier, like researching if there is true computer death. If we can just replace a RAM, then did it die at all? Um, Whereas a human life ceases to exist when all neurological works cease, they're dead. Um, and just like come to a more concise conclusion if computers and humans are alike. Just because I noticed in these research papers that there has not been a concise ending with it rather than like an open ending question. But yeah, that is my presentation. Thank you. And here are my uh, references for this work. Thank you.